everyone, hello all, and welcome to the latest edition of the Figure Fourcast. My name's Sam, and I'm joined by Big Damo. How are you doing, Damien?
Thanks for that one. I wonder who's going to be the first person to call me that after listening to this. I'm doing okay. The big story to start this is I lost the punishment again. I lost the predictions again. Sorry.
Oh,
I have to do
good.
the punishment.
Oh, good.
Yeah. What's
happened?
annoying is I lost by 2. Obviously, one was from failing the first punishment, and if I'd had the confidence, I should have predicted that Miz was going to cash in, because in the predictions I say that I think he's going to cash in. You go, oh, I don't think he will. If I'd said that, if I would put it down as prediction, we would have drawn, and we'd both be doing it. But unfortunately, we're not. I didn't do that, and now I have to wax my legs.
So that is now 2 wins in a row since we started the podcast for me, and 2 losses in a row for you, which is quite a turn up for the books, seeing as before we started this podcast we did predictions anyway, and Damien would most often win almost every single pay-per-view. So since turning professional, I have a 100% record.
Yeah, my amateur record included predicting every match correctly, I believe on a WrestleMania card.
Yes.
And going for almost a year without losing. That was before we did punishments. That was when we had the Smoking Skull toy replica title belt that we put on the line.
Which I've still got that. And once social distancing is a thing of the past, we're definitely using that belt again. You are well and truly the Audley Harrison of the prediction world. And if you don't know who that is, anyone doesn't know who that is, check it out. He's a boxer, and when he was in the amateurs and at the Olympics, I think he won gold at the Olympics. And as soon as he turned professional, he was absolute dog shit. And that is what your career is turning out to be, unfortunately for you.
Yes, very unfortunate for me. But while we're on the topic, let's just jump right into the show and give you our opinions.
Elimination Chamber.
It was a pretty short card, actually. You include the pre-show match, which was put on there last minute. I think it was 6 matches. Well, actually, if you include what happened at the end of the show, it's 7 matches.
Yeah, there was kind of 5 stories throughout the entire pay-per-view. So we'll touch on a little bit on all of them. We'll conclude, obviously, the pre-show match ties into a match later on in the show, so we'll discuss that at the same point. But we'll start, as Elimination Chamber started, with the Universal Championship Elimination Chamber, obviously for the number 1 contendership. What did you think to the match? Because I watched it the next day, and although I enjoyed the actual stuff inside the Elimination Chamber, I was a bit iffy on the booking decisions that were made.
Yeah, obviously our predictions were wrong. I was closer than you. I had Jey Uso in, and he was second, so I did have a glimmer of hope in there. But for a match on its own, I enjoyed the match. I thought there was some really good things in there. It was entertaining watching it. It all depends on what happens on this SmackDown this week, to be honest. At the time recording before SmackDown's happened. So Daniel Bryan would end up winning the match, and Roman Reigns would come down for an immediate title match. I had Daniel Bryan to win the Royal Rumble and face Reigns at Mania. So if they do a sort of short-term program into Fastlane with Daniel Bryan, I'm definitely not against that. Any match with Daniel Bryan in is always a good match. So
yeah, I'm not against Daniel Bryan being in the title picture. He's always really enjoyable to watch. I actually said it last week when we was trying to do our predictions that I didn't see any benefit to having Daniel Bryan win and then immediately lose to Roman Reigns, and that's kind of how I felt when I watched it. Like, the Elimination Chamber was enjoyable, had some great spots, but it didn't really further the stories in a meaningful way. Like, it just seemed like, let's get this out of the way so that we can have Edge come in and confirm he's going to face Roman Reigns. You might argue that it made Daniel Bryan look like a sympathetic underdog who's got to overcome the odds, but it's Daniel Bryan, that's his entire thing. He didn't need the kind of beat down to happen to do that, so I'm not sure why they picked him. Out of the people that were in it, it wasn't a bad decision, it just for me didn't feel like it benefited anyone to have that match.
I see what you're saying, but I feel like if that's the way that they were going to go, with Daniel Bryan losing eventually, it's not going to hurt him. Potentially it would have hurt other people in there. Cesaro's on sort of a mini arc. Kevin Owens has already lost twice in a row to Roman Reigns, so a third would sort of ruin any credibility that he's got. And the way that they did it with Bryan, with Reigns running at him and then putting him straight in a label lock, I feel like it sort of gives the sense of, well, if I didn't just go through an elimination chamber and get my ass beaten by 5 other men, I could have had you, kind of thing. So I don't think it's completely squashed down Daniel Bryan in terms of a title competitor. And if they sort of lead into that, Daniel Bryan taunting Roman Reigns in a way, taunting this cocky heel and saying, well, like I say, if I wasn't just in an elimination chamber match and my body's just been beaten, then I could have beaten you. I feel like that could be a way to go.
That's a potential story they could tell, and obviously we'll find out a little bit more on SmackDown, and I imagine this is something that's going to play out either leading up into Fastlane or potentially post WrestleMania. So it could turn out to be okay, but at the time when I watched it, watching that match, it wasn't a kind of like, oh yeah, that was a good ending. I enjoyed the match. I just didn't really enjoy the kind of the overall story they told with it. It's a running theme a little bit for my opinions throughout the entire pay-per-view. This match and one other match really kind of set this theme for me. It felt like one of the WWE specials they do, like the Saudi Arabia shows, the Australia show, things like that, when they put on big matches, but they're very inconsequential. Obviously, we have a big ending to the pay-per-view, but other than that, I don't really feel like much was added to the stories that hadn't already been established.
I agree with you partially. I think I'm higher on the Elimination Chamber matches than you in a whole, but the rest of the card I would tend to agree. I think it's just this chamber match has fed into the Reigns character more than anything.
Yeah, maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah,
but
the storyline progression or the lack of it, I just have a feeling that it's got something to do with there being another pay-per-view sort of in the middle of this. Although it's a bit of a filler pay-per-view, they've still got to do something there. But let's move on to the next match anyway, which, without the benefit of hindsight, watching it at the time was a real downer for me coming off of the Elimination Chamber match. It was the United States title match between Riddle, Bobby Lashley and John Morrison, who won the qualifier triple threat in the pre-show. It was an alright match. To be fair, there was a couple of decent bits in there, and Riddle would end up winning by pinning John Morrison. And just in storyline at the time, before what else happens later in the show, Riddle had lost and been dominated by Bobby Lashley week in, week out, and would end up effectively defeating him and taking his title. It just didn't really seem like it had any sort of sense behind it.
Yeah, watching it live, I felt that it was going to be like a John Morrison victory. I kind of thought building into this, and obviously initially it was meant to be Keith Lee in the match, that Keith Lee was going to win before the injury, and I thought there was a chance that John Morrison was going to win. Obviously we predicted Bobby Lashley to win because he's just been dominant for the last few weeks. The swerve to me would have been John Morrison. In a completely similar way to the last match, I felt that the story told kind of in the match was good, and then the booking decision was odd again. Like you said, you've had Riddle lose a few times for a few weeks, then he gets. If they did want Riddle to have the title, switch the roles, still have the match play out the same way, but have John Morrison pick up the win, and then you've got a match at Fastlane, or delay it a little bit, and then you've got your payoff a bit later, and it gives Morrison something to do. As at the moment done a whole lot, which is a shame because he's a great performer.
He's a lot more than just Mrs. Psychic, isn't he? He's a good wrestler. In real life, if you look at Bobby Lashley, he's an absolute unit, and this is the way that he should have been booked all along. And I think it's only goofy booking that he's been in with like Lana and past that sort of put that seed in your mind that he's not a force to be reckoned with. when really he should have been. So
it just,
I'm happy
to
with the
me,
way it's been booked now.
it made the other two look weaker than they should have. Like I said, watching it live, that's how I felt. When you watch it in hindsight and you know what they're building, it's like, okay, this makes sense. Making people look overly dominant is always a bit of a double-edged sword. Of like, you want them to look tough, but you don't want their opponents to look weak, especially if they're meant to go on. But it all works out in the end, so we can forgive that.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing. Let's go to the next match, which was another down point for me, which is a shame, with three of the competitors in the Women's Tag Team Championship match between Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler and Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. The match was meh, is all I can really say. It wasn't really memorable to me, and it would finish with a screwy finish in Reginald coming out and offering Sasha Banks a bottle of champagne, I believe, which would distract her, and Nia Jax would end up beating Sasha. It wasn't so much the match that disappointed me. I sort of expected that finish, even though Damien might tell you differently. I expected Sasha and Bianca to win. The thing that really disappointed me was that there was no sort of story development, which is what you were on about earlier. If they were going to lose the match, you'd sort of expect it to lead into a story going to WrestleMania between Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair, potentially Banks turning on Belair, or something like that. But there was just nothing. They just lost, and then that was the end of the match. Move on.
We've got one last match to talk about, as well as a post-match segment. Again, the match for this, the Elimination Chamber match, had some good moments, but overall I was kind of disappointed with. A highlight for me was the AJ Styles and Omos, however you pronounce his name, moment of him pulling like the back of the pod off and AJ running in. I really liked that. It's something we've not really seen before. That was one of the highlights. For me, the big problem with this is we expected a lot of shenanigans of some of the competitors in it, and there's two of the competitors have big stories building at the moment, and there was nothing for either of them. There was nothing for Randy Orton. He may as well have not been in the match because he gets eliminated incredibly quickly. There's no build at all to his match with the Fiend. And the other one was Kofi Kingston, who's been building this match with Mustafa Ali, and it didn't even get a mention. It felt like they'd completely forgotten about it. There was a little bit when his entrance, when he looks behind him to check that no one's running in, and I guess that was something. But I'm not disappointed that it didn't happen. Obviously, I predicted it was going to happen, so it would have been nice for that to come true. But it's the fact that neither of these big stories kind of had anything. Again, it felt like this match was just, let's get through this so that we can get to what happens afterwards. Which, for a big match like an Elimination Chamber, shouldn't be the story that's being told.
Yeah, I completely agree. In terms of the Randy and the Fiend stuff, that is what it is. I've got my own views on it, and it didn't happen. I wasn't too devastated about it. That's fine. But I was more sort of annoyed that Mustafa Ali and the Kofi Kingston story wasn't expanded upon, because Elimination Chamber is the perfect place for it to happen. That's where this whole story started in 2019, I think it was. 2 years ago, Elimination Chamber, where Mustafa Ali couldn't compete because of an injury. So it seems like the perfect point to further the story now into WrestleMania, but they just skipped it completely. How can you not see it? How can you not see it at all? Even if it's just an attack backstage or something, so Kofi can't go into the match. It's literally there on a plate for you, and they didn't take it.
Even if it's just like something simple like that, just some acknowledgement of this story. As we do, if I remember correctly, there is a moment in Raw where they suggest they're going back to that story anyway. Yeah, it felt like this match could have taken place at any Elimination Chamber, and it still would have played out exactly the same. Yeah. Now, the one highlight of the entire pay-per-view for me is the final segment. It's caused a lot of debate online. I haven't actually really spoken to you beforehand, so it would be interesting to find out what your opinion of this is. But we did have a Bobby Lashley beatdown of Drew McIntyre after the match, followed by a Miz cash-in, and Miz becoming the new WWE champion. What did you think to the ending?
I liked it. I liked it because there was a plan there, and it wasn't just a random cash-in. Earlier in the night, you saw I think it was the Miz speaking to MVP. I mean, it was a bit in your face.
It was set up.
Just, a secret camera filming Miz and MVP talking. But I love the Bobby Lashley beatdown. It looked brutal to the extent where you could actually buy into McIntyre being properly injured and Miz being able to cash in and winning on him. The only bit that I don't like is that Miz didn't go for the skull crushing finale straight away. He went for some stupid DDT thinking that he would win.
I mean, it is one of his signature moves, after all. But
yeah, man. But no one.
What do you think about Miz?
Finale.
What do you think about Miz being champion again?
I'm higher on Miz than a lot of people. I think I liked him back in 2010, so I don't mind seeing him as the champion. I think it's pretty clear that he's make weight champion until Lashley wins it, and we're going to see a program with Lashley and Drew McIntyre going into WrestleMania, which is interesting.
That does seem like a logical. Yeah, it does seem like the logical progression of the story. I like Miz as the champion. I think that title looks really good on him as well.
It looks strange on him to me. I don't know what it is about it.
It's the second best new WWE champion look we've seen last week. Obviously, there was a mock-up of Kenny Omega from AEW with the title, and that suited him as well, from a little slip of the tongue by Jim Ross over on AEW. But I do think Miz looks great with that title. I really like the Miz though, because he's a great character wrestler. Even though he didn't have an out there character of The Undertaker, for example, is a character. The Miz's character of being the A-lister and kind of the stuff he does about that is always quite enjoyable. There is a moment on Raw which we'll get into more in a moment, but it's just the look on his face when he's told who he's going to have to face. It's something you can only do if you're either genuinely worried about something or you can act, and not every wrestler has the acting ability. And I'm not saying Miz is a great actor. I've watched a couple of movies there.
I was going to say, have you seen The Marine?
But he understands how to tell a story with his face and with his body language.
He does, yeah.
So that is something that's great for the kind of character he plays. He's been through a lot. There's a lot of stories about his early days in WWE, not getting like the respect and stuff. But I think it's well deserved.
Yeah, I like The Miz, and there's a place for him. People don't like it, but those people can go and spin on it. And if it's a short reign, so be it. I'm into Bobby Lashley versus McIntyre at WrestleMania, and if it gives Drew the opportunity to win the title at Mania in front of fans, which he didn't get last year, that's great. And I think it'll be the first time Lashley's a world champion in WWE, off the top of my head. He
held the ECW world title in
give me a break.
But yeah, he's not held a main roster world title.
It just makes me excited because Lashley's finally getting booked in the way that I want him to be, as someone strong. And it is worth mentioning actually about the Miz that I saw and I think he mentioned it on Raw, the first two-time Grand Slam champion to do it 2 times over in a row of anyone in history.
So he's in the record books, which that would be nice for him.
That's pretty cool.
Talking about Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania, we've been talking about it for a number of weeks now, about this idea of revisiting last year's WrestleMania, but now that they've got a crowd, they want to redo some of those moments. I can see a parallel with Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre as being a updated version of last year's. Obviously, last year he fought Brock Lesnar, and they don't really have Brock Lesnar at the moment. We don't know when he's coming back or what he's off doing, whatever Brock Lesnar does in his spare time. Do you think they might be playing on the background for Bobby Lashley? Obviously, he went and did MMA, and he's kind of got that legit fighter experience as well. So is there a parallel there of why maybe they've decided now to pull the trigger on a Bobby Lashley push?
Potentially, yeah. Potentially. It's they've got similar backgrounds, like you say, but I don't think the match will be anything like it was last year in terms of length or work. I think Lashley's going to give a longer match with some different spots, but yeah, they could draw into it, I suppose. I'm just into it, man. Bobby's a big strong boy, Drew's a big strong boy.
Yeah.
Give me 2 big strong boys smashing each other. That sounds really wrong.
Well, let's stop that conversation right there. Whilst we're on the topic of Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley and The Miz, let's jump over and discuss this week's episode of Monday Night Raw.
Monday Night Raw.
So we've spoken about a lot of the main topics from Monday Night Raw a little bit already. A lot of it was continuation of either ongoing stories from previous weeks or the new stories that were set up by Elimination Chamber. The Miz and Bobby Lashley story being a big winner. Obviously, we spoke about it quite a bit a moment ago on our Elimination Chamber review. The main talking point, I think, from what we got on Raw is that Bobby Lashley is going to face The Miz next week for the title. I kind of expected it to either be last night or Fastlane. What do you reckon to that? We'll have like a mini prediction for next week.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. It can go one of two ways for me. Bobby Lashley's either just going to absolutely dominate him and win the title, or there's going to be some sort of shenanigans and The Miz ends up retaining. Not clean, but I can't see The Miz just retaining cleanly.
No, I think shenanigans has got to be the way to go. Give The Miz at least one title defence, even if it is a screwy finish. Obviously, we didn't see him on Raw this week. Do you reckon maybe a Drew McIntyre involvement next week? I believe he was kept off TV this week because otherwise him versus Bobby Lashley would have been like the dominant story, and they wanted to avoid that. So at some point he's got to come back. I reckon we might see that, like an interference, a little bit of a preview of a potential showdown, and then maybe we get The Miz in a match at Fastlane, or even a triple threat at WrestleMania.
Well, that's the feeling that I've got. Just thinking about it now, that McIntyre gets involved next week, and then at Fastlane we have a triple threat between Lashley, Miz, and McIntyre. But I don't really see how that leads into Mania. It's tricky.
Not really sure.
I don't know. I've just talked myself into now thinking that maybe Lashley is just going to go over clean.
Maybe. I don't really want to see Miz become a 8-day transitional champion, but that is one possibility they could go for. I'm hoping there's a little bit more storytelling to be told. I hope he at least holds it to Fastlane, but I wouldn't be opposed to seeing a triple threat, as I feel like although Bobby Lashley versus Drew, two big men clashing, could be a good match, like The Miz being involved doesn't necessarily ruin it. They could still tell a good story, but
I can't see Miz going into Mania. But this is what we want. This is what we want. Some good stories, actual good stories that we don't know where they're going. And I think Lashley would look amazing with that championship on as well.
Is there any other big talking points from Raw that you'd like to discuss?
Something that I've been picking up on the last few weeks is AJ Styles looking really, really strong. I can't remember last time he's just lost a match, and he went into this week and defeated Ricochet clean, and I feel like it's potentially leading to a match at WrestleMania, but the big question is, who is it against? I've seen reports of it potentially being Triple H, which doesn't really excite me that much, to be honest, but I can't really think of any other people that he could go up against in a sort of a high stakes match.
He's been booked quite strong since Survivor Series, at least. Obviously, he was team captain for Raw then. He was the gatekeeper for the Royal Rumble, which was an odd but fun little program he had before that, of everyone had to beat him to qualify for some reason. And he's had some quite strong booking, even though Omos gets involved frequently. It's not constant. AJ is booked to be able to win by himself a lot of the time as well, which definitely makes it a better story. I'm not opposed to a Triple H WrestleMania match. I know a lot of people don't like them, but they've got their own style and they can work. I don't know how you build to that match.
I don't mind them for the spectacle, but I don't see where the story comes in. Where's the story between AJ and Triple H? I can't see one.
Hopefully we get some story start to develop in the next few weeks. But yeah, AJ has been booked quite well, and hopefully that continues.
It's just come to me. I know what the match is going to be. We've had Shane McMahon return to Raw recently. We've got AJ Styles. And what's the one thing that links those two people? Someone that's worked for both of them. Almas. Custody for Almas match. Custody of Almas. Contract on top of the ladder. Shane McMahon jumping off of it, AJ Styles jumping off of Almas, using Almas instead of the ladder to get the contract. That's what's going to happen at WrestleMania.
Oh, Shane McMahon's going to jump off the pirate ship.
He's going to get fired out of a cannon.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of
Maybe,
a big Shane McMahon spot.
Maybe Kevin Owens will get fired out of the cannon and do his cannonball, and he'll hit someone in the ring with the cannonball.
We're drifting into ridiculousness territory, but you know what? Sometimes WWE is ridiculous.
I feel like...
Probably not someone
this
fired out of a cannon ridiculous, but...
Yeah, well, at this time in human history, the more ridiculous the better.
Yeah, we need a little bit of ridiculousness with everything that's going on in the real world, so... I wouldn't be opposed to Shane McMahon getting fired out of a cannon. I mean, we've got a live crowd, so they couldn't even do it like with camera tricks and stuff. Supposedly going to have a live crowd. We'll see it closer to the time what actually happens with that. Yeah, hopefully there's a big WrestleMania dramatic moment. We got a little bit off topic there, so let's take it back to Raw again.
Something equally as ridiculous.
Yeah, we'll stay on the ridiculous side. With the Randy Orton Alexa Bliss segment, you've been pretty lukewarm at best to these kind of segments over the last few weeks, and they do seem to be, they're just like, there's a little bit that happens, and it's like, oh, remember, like, the Fiend is still here, he's still got some feud with Randy Orton, and that has led to this week being one of the most ridiculous, quote, spooky moments in WWE we've ever had, of Alexa Bliss doing a ritual. I don't even know how to describe it. She's sat in a pentagram in like a cutaway segment, and then Randy Orton starts coughing up black goo. And someone pointed it out on Twitter that it is very reminiscent of a segment with Papa Shango and I believe the Ultimate Warrior from back in the day. A segment that is ridiculed to this day for its ridiculousness. Surprisingly, despite them being very similar moments, I actually enjoyed the Randy Orton segment for its ridiculousness. I thought it was hilarious. I don't know if it was meant to be funny. I feel like it had to at least be a little bit like intended to be funny. But yeah, I don't know what's going on with this. We've had this theory about a Firefly Funhouse match at WrestleMania with Randy Orton and the Fiend. I don't know what we're gonna get. This with the spooky shenanigans going on. I feel like they're so bad they're good. Is kind of my opinion on them. I mean, if people hate them, I understand why. But for me, I couldn't take my eyes off it. As soon as it cut away to Alexa Bliss, I was like, oh, something good is going to happen. And Randy Orton coughs up black goo. So that was worth it for me. What are your thoughts then, Sam?
There's some goo in his mouth. There's some goo in his mouth. There's some goo in his mouth. Hints of the Fiend every single week. Spooky bollocks makes Damien's knees weak. That's my views of what's going on with Randy Orton at the minute and the Fiend.
I don't even know how to react to what you've just done.
What's more ridiculous, that or the storyline?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. If you were still listening after that moment, I don't think we can follow that with any more talk about Monday Night Raw. So I think that's the best thing for us to do right now, I think, is to just jump over and talk about the blue brand.
Friday Night SmackDown.
Okay, so moving over to SmackDown, which is fresh in both of our minds, as it was last night. We watched it this morning, at time of recording it's Saturday. SmackDown for me has been a really good show, consistently for a number of weeks now, and this one is no different for me. We've had some big decisions in this show, and some potential matchups for the future made as well as some character development. So I'm interested to get your views on this, Damien.
Yeah, I've been enjoying SmackDown since before we started doing the podcast, but it has been particularly good over the last few weeks. There was a little bit of me that felt this week felt a little bit more of a filler week. Like there wasn't a lot that really progressed. I know we did get a couple of developments on some stories, but they felt a lot more smaller than some other weeks. There wasn't really like a big moment. Everything was just kind of progressing as we expected it this week. That doesn't take anything away from the show. It was still enjoyable, and I did have some fun watching it this morning. But it just was one of those weeks where I wouldn't say anything huge happened, but as you build towards WrestleMania, you kind of do need to have those kind of weeks where you just move the story forward a little bit at a time so that you can get that big payoff at the end. And that's kind of, to me, what we got this week.
The first thing that I wanted to talk about was the development of the Apollo Crews heel character on this show. It was hinted at last week, I believe, that he was heritage of Nigerian royalty, which seemed a little bit odd to me, but that further developed this week, and he wore a scarf with the Nigerian colours, and he'd switched his tights to tights rather than trunks. So a bit of a different look for Apollo. And he would go on to say that his ancestors were kings and queens in Nigeria, and that the Apollo that we have been seeing wasn't the real Apollo. This is the real Apollo, and now he's just thinking of himself. So the big question is Apollo the one that we can all blame for the emails from Nigerian princes?
Oh my god. I don't even know how to answer that question. That's not what I thought you were going to ask me at all. Probably not. But I don't know how much truth there is to this story with Apollo. It's not something I've been able... I did have a quick look online to see if there's anything to suggest that, but don't know whether it's true or not. But it's an interesting character. Hopefully there is always a risk with a character of this type that WWE don't handle it with tact. That is obviously a risk. But what we saw this week was quite enjoyable. Even though he's a heel, like, it was nice to see him being given this kind of serious persona. Like, it looks like he's going in a good direction for the character, and hopefully they can build on that. I thought the new attire looked great on him as well.
Yeah, he's had the new tights have had the Bobby Lashley effect on him. Since Bobby Lashley turned to tights, he's been an absolute killer. And Apollo, I'm not saying he's to the level of Bobby Lashley, but I'm liking what I've seen so far. Presumably this is leading to a match between Big E, who wasn't on the show this week. He's still recovering from the attack from Apollo last week at Fastlane, I'm guessing. A match for the title at Fastlane. I guess it may be continued into WrestleMania, but I still have a hint that it's going to be a multi-man match at Mania, potentially a ladder match or something with Shinsuke and Cesaro and a few of those guys in there.
Yeah, there's that possibility. Obviously, Cesaro's had his own story this week with Seth Rollins, but there is that possibility of there being a multi-man match. And I don't really mind the multi-man matches. They tend to be pretty good. Hopefully, this is a good character turn for Apollo. It is amazing sometimes how just a little attire change can be what sets a character apart. Like the heel turn obviously took place last week, but I feel like him changing his attire really kind of cemented it this week, and we could have a nice strong mid card presence over the next few months, and hopefully that is what we get with him.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to seeing what's to come with Apollo, especially if it's a match with Big E in the future. I think that'll be really entertaining. Another point on SmackDown that I wanted to discuss with you was that Bianca Belair has finally made up her mind and decided to face Sasha Banks at WrestleMania for the SmackDown's Women's Championship. First of all, that's the right decision and the one that they were hinting towards for quite a while. But what did you think of the segment in a sort of standalone segment?
Didn't really enjoy the segment because we knew who she was going to pick. They've been building this story up, and they've already been kind of hinting at potential Raw WrestleMania stories. So we kind of knew she was going to pick Sasha Banks. I liked the promo package they played for Asuka and then Sasha Banks. I thought that was quite well done. It built them up as kind of tough opponents to face, like who you're going to pick. And then we just got all this stuff with Reginald, and we've been saying it for a number of weeks now that this story is just a little confusing to us, and I feel this was just more of that. Like I can't see what the end goal is with this, unless of course it is in some way to turn Sasha heel, to make her the heel, even if they keep her face, but just to make her the person that you're meant to want to lose. I feel like the only goal they could be trying to achieve with this, but it just felt a bit weird. It wasn't bad. It was just kind of left me scratching my head, so to speak, when I was watching it.
Yeah,
But it accomplished what they needed it to, but there's still this whole extra story going around there, which is going to potentially overshadow the build to Sasha and Bianca Belair.
Yeah, it just made me reinforce the thought in my mind of what was the point of the women's title match if literally nothing came from that at all. Yeah. I wasn't a big advocate for the women's title match, but surely it would have been more interesting for them, like you predicted, to potentially win the title and then have a fallout, rather than having a corny segment in the ring with Adam Pearce and Sonya Deville that sort of didn't really feel like it meant much. It just felt out of place in a way. And the Reginald involvement for me was a strange one again this week. I don't actually think Carmella was on this show this week from what I saw. I may have skipped past it, but I didn't see Carmella on this show. So Reginald's involvement was strange, because I had it in my head that he was going to somehow manage to get Carmella potentially into the title picture, maybe for a filler match at Fastlane, but it doesn't seem like that's the way. It just seems like Reginald's somehow enamoured with Sasha Banks, which is a bit odd in itself. But yeah, it was all a bit of a mix and match for me, and it didn't really work. But at the end of the day, we got the match that we wanted for Mania, so hopefully, fingers crossed, it all goes swimmingly towards WrestleMania, and we get a really good match between Sasha and Bianca Belair.
Yeah, that match has potential to be one of the matches of the night. Obviously, WrestleMania was on 2 nights this year again, but it could be one of the best, if not the best, across the entire show. They're both tremendous workers, so hopefully, yeah, we do get that one-on-one, no weirdness with Carmella or Reginald or anyone else. Just let them have 20 minutes to wrestle, and it could go either way at the minute. But yeah, that could be a great feud. Hopefully, they don't mess it up with all this extra stuff that's kind of going on around the story.
Absolutely, as Batista would say, "Give me what I want." It's what the people want. So give us it, WWE. Give us a singles match, a good singles match at Mania. Now, the main theme and story throughout SmackDown this week was between Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns. As I predicted in the earlier part of this podcast, which was recorded earlier in this week, Daniel Bryan confronted Reigns at the beginning of SmackDown, essentially saying that I would beat you if I didn't just go through an Elimination Chamber match and give me a title match at Fastlane. I think he actually called Reigns a coward, which Reigns didn't like. It was eventually agreed that Daniel Bryan could have a match with Roman Reigns at Fastlane if he defeated main event Jey Uso. What are your thoughts on the beginning of SmackDown with this segment?
Just before I jump into that, I do think that it was also mentioned throughout the show that the match as currently planned for Fastlane is a tag match between Daniel Bryan and Edge versus Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. They kept kind of alluding to that as being what had been planned before all of this story took place. So I think you had like a segment with Edge talking about it, then there's a segment with Heyman and Roman Reigns talking about it, and so you kind of got this. We're looking instead to have the Daniel Bryan match versus Roman Reigns, and I feel like that was the right kind of story to tell. Like I've already spoken a little bit earlier about how I didn't like the Daniel Bryan winning the Elimination Chamber just to lose, because he didn't really do anything for him. Then along comes SmackDown, and he's kind of like making me eat my words, like they are going to try and do something for him. So I quite like the segment. I thought the promo was pretty good of like kind of Daniel Bryan kind of trying to offend Roman Reigns without actually offending him at times. Obviously, he does call him like says he's cowardly or something like that.
It's kind of
So,
a kill him with kindness
was,
type tactic, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was definitely that kind of promo where if Daniel Bryan had been a heel, he would have been like vicious in his words, but because he's a face, he can't do that. So he's kind of got to be like not cocky, but he's got to play up to his kind of strengths rather than that, and that talk about how Roman Reigns should be better but isn't. And I quite liked it. Again, it set up a good story for the entire show. And that is the one criticism that you see a lot about wrestling shows is that they start with a promo when they should start with a match. And I think I've already said it on a previous episode. I like when they start with a promo if it leads to a story throughout the show. It kind of gives the entire show something to focus on throughout. And again, that's what I feel like we got with this. So I really liked that opening. It obviously led into the end.
Whilst I agree that it benefited the story and helped develop it, the only thing that I would pick up on, which WWE do a lot, which really frustrates me, but you sort of have to put it to the back of your mind because it's WWE, is that they booked the main event for the show in the opening promo. And say it was real life. I obviously know it's not real life and it's all scripted and blah, blah, blah. But if it was real life, what show doesn't have their main event set for the week? That's the only thing that I'd pick up on. But like I say, I like the story between Bryan and Reigns, and it's a mirror of a match a few years back, at Fastlane, where Reigns and Daniel Bryan fought, and Reigns defeated Bryan. So, and obviously the heel and face dynamics were different, so it's a nice little bit of mirror in there. I think the match would be a lot better received this time around with the Reigns character that we've got now compared to the Reigns character we had back then. But I liked how the story developed with Bryan a bit later in the show as well. He was having a backstage interview with one of the interviewers. I can't remember who it was off the top of my mind. But essentially, he was saying that he'll beat Roman Reigns, and he's not sure if Edge would beat Roman Reigns. And of course, Edge was conveniently nearby and just hops in, and there's a little bit of confrontation there, and it led to Edge saying, "Well, if we had a match, if you do win the title at Fastlane, who would win in that match?" And it was sort of a nice little bit of tension built there, and it's another dynamic added to this story.
Yeah, they do like to tease those little interactions between people. I have a feeling that they do that kind of thing in WWE just so that if there is a problem, like someone gets hurt and can't, then they've got that the kind of little Plan B story already kind of there as well.
I suppose that's sensible with Edge's and I guess Daniel Bryan's injury records.
Well, all three have concerns for performance. Like Roman Reigns is not immune to injury and stuff, so I do feel like they do always like to have a little backup plan involved. Obviously, it led into the main event match we talked about, which was Daniel Bryan versus Jey Uso, where if Daniel Bryan won, he would get the title match at Fastlane. And when they announced this match, I kind of expected Roman Reigns to cost Daniel Bryan the match somehow, and then them to have a bit with Adam Pearce in the next week or so, where they're like, well, actually, he didn't lose because of this, and he's going to get the match anyway. And they kind of swerved on that with a double count out, and then the Roman beatdown afterwards. I'm not sure what happens next with this. Like with a double count out, they do mention it on commentary that he didn't win, but he didn't lose because it was a draw. So what do you reckon is going to happen for the Fastlane match?
I don't know. I know that's not a good answer for a podcast, but I don't know. Honestly, don't know. Yeah. I have absolutely no idea where this goes. I think somehow, in some way, we are going to get a match between Reigns and Bryan at Fastlane, but on the conclusion of this match, I have absolutely no idea how we get to that. There is sort of a little tint in my mind that what if they go for a triple threat match at Mania with Bryan added into Edge and Reigns?
Well, they've done it a lot in the past where they have this kind of setup where they have two people face, and if whoever wins gets the number one contendership or gets they win something by winning the match, and someone costs them it, and they do the whole it was actually a draw, so they're both in. And they did one the other year, I believe, with Finn Balor and Seth Rollins, and the winner got to go into the Elimination Chamber, and they kind of pinned each other. So it was a draw, so they both went in, and that's common story thread that WWE will pick up on. But how the story is with this, that doesn't really work, because if they go with that, then we have a triple threat at Fastlane: Daniel Bryan versus Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns, and that doesn't really work as a match. Yeah, so maybe that's what they will do, and it will be another one of like Daniel Bryan not getting that fair shot. Actually, I think I've talked myself into it. I think that might be what happens. That you've got a story there, Daniel Bryan not getting fair chances at the match, and yeah, maybe they do build to a triple threat. I'm not sure.
Or maybe they are going for this tag team match that you're on about with Edge and Bryan versus Reigns and Uso. But it's a strange one, Bryan's situation that he's in, because he could technically get into the WWE title match, make it a triple threat at Mania, but then that kind of undermines the Universal title, sorry. That kind of undermines the whole point of Edge winning the Rumble. But if he doesn't get into that, what does he do at Mania? Because he's not really anywhere near the Intercontinental title picture. I suppose if there's a multi-man match, you could just throw him in there. But there's no sort of firm story for him to do anything other than being involved with Reigns at the
Did
minute.
he fight Uso? Because I kind of thought we were going to get Kevin Owens.
Is that a WrestleMania match?
Maybe a pre-show match. I don't know.
I like both of them, but is Jey Uso versus Daniel Bryan a WrestleMania caliber match?
It could be. Like, we've seen some great stuff from Jey Uso, and obviously Daniel Bryan is a great wrestler as well. So it is a potential. Like, if they were given like the time, so that could be a great match. Maybe it doesn't have maybe it's not quite grand enough to be a WrestleMania match as the kind of characters have been built, but I feel like it could be. Maybe there's something with Jimmy Uso coming back. I don't know what his recovery timeline is for his injury. Obviously, I think we've got 40-something days until WrestleMania. I think Paul Heyman puts
it on a month, isn't it? 'Cause it's beginning of April.
10th of April, 10th and 11th of April, I believe. There's still time to tell a story for that. There's a lot of twists and turns we can expect before we actually get to WrestleMania. So,
but this is what I like. Like I said earlier at the end of Raw, we've got a story that's developing every week, and we don't know where it's going to go to. So it's all good stuff.
WWE has been hounded in the past for being predictable with their storytelling. We've said it in the past. Obviously, we've been doing predictions for the last two pay-per-views for the enjoyment of listeners, but we've done predictions for about 3 years before this, and we've had a much greater success rate in predictions. And over the last year or so, I'd say it's started to become more and more difficult to predict things, because WWE seem to be doing stuff kind of out of nowhere, both good and bad, that is. It's making it somewhat more enjoyable to be a viewer of just not knowing exactly what's going to happen. I remember a WrestleMania build from quite a few years ago now, which was Randy Orton versus Triple H, and from about a month before Royal Rumble, it was obvious that the WrestleMania match was going to be those two. We knew kind of what the build was going to be because we'd started to see it, and there was no real twists and turns until the ending. I think Triple H won the match, which was quite surprising, but it is nice to have a title build to WrestleMania where we can have a guess at the obvious ending, but not to know the exact route we're going to get there. Let's just hope that the story can continue to be built well and they don't drop the ball. Is all I'll say on that one.
Yes, not like Triple H to put himself over someone else. But...
There's one last little thing I want to mention. I want to let the story play out a little before we really dive into discussing it. But there was an interaction between Seth Rollins and Cesaro on this week's episode. And I want to mention it because there was a moment during it that just made me laugh so much, which was Cesaro doing the big swing on Seth Rollins. And it just made me laugh so much because it's Seth Rollins laying on the floor with Cesaro holding his legs. It's like, no, don't do it. Put me down. And then start swinging him. Oh, I was laughing so much watching that segment. I want to see where this is going before we really jump into it and discuss it, because not a lot has happened so far in that. But that moment this week,
no, it's in its embryonic stage. But
yeah,
I'm enjoying this Seth Rollins character. Actually, it's kind of exactly the same as his Messiah character, but there seems to be some comedic elements in there, which has sort of renewed that character in a way for me. And I have to say, I loved his Colonel Sanders suit that he came out in.
It's kind of like a merge between his old Burn It Down architect Seth Rollins kind of character and the Messiah character. It's kind of like a middle ground between the two, which is why I think it is working. But yeah, his outfit choices over the last couple of appearances have been interesting to say the least. There's the Colonel Sanders number this week. He wore like a full leather suit the other week, which just must have been. He had a leather shirt on with a leather jacket over the top like that. That must have been hot.
It's a look. Yes, yeah, especially under all those lights. I'm enjoying this Seth character, and program with him and Cesaro is bound to be good.
Yeah, we'll discuss it more in the future when there's something actually kind of been built. It's not too much at the moment, and but yeah, I just wanted to mention laughing at that swing. Like I kind of love those little moments sometimes. So,
and I think the takeaway from SmackDown is that it was another good show, another solid show from SmackDown, which it has been for weeks now, if not going on to months. And the ultimate takeaway is that nobody is meaner than Tamina.
The big question.
Okay, so every week we try and have a big kind of topic to discuss. Something we've discussed in the past has been highlights from Royal Rumble matches and Elimination Chamber matches. But this week, as an extra kind of special question, we've actually got one sent in from a listener. So this has been sent in by James, and he's asked us that what is our favourite entrance music. Now, before we have a little think, he's said that his favourite one is CM Punk's song, but not the one everyone's thinking of. It's actually
the Kill Switch Engage song he likes.
Yeah.
My Fire Burns.
Engaged. My Fire Burns. So when I got the message, I kind of expected it to be kind of the more famous one. No, that is a great
CM
song.
CM Punk has had really good music, and both of his songs are up there. I think I have them in my gym playlist, both of them actually.
Yeah,
they're just both really enjoyable. For me, when you sent that question to me, the first song that came to my head was Edge's theme tune, "You Think You Know Me." It's just awesome, and it goes back to a lot of good memories. The most recent one of them, obviously, being Edge's return last year at the Rumble. We were both in the same room, a distant time where we could meet and watch wrestling in the same room together. And I think we both got to our feet and cheered when he actually came back. It's just awesome, and like I say, so many good memories with that. And his song, it sort of just sets the scene for a good match.
Yeah, I couldn't say any more on that one. Edge's theme is an absolute classic. It was actually recently mentioned to me because I was kind of aware of it, but hadn't really thought about it in a long time. It's an actual song. It's not just Edge's theme. There is I can't think of the title off the top of my head, but it is an actual song, and I do think the best wrestling themes are the ones that are real music that's just been kind of altered slightly to work as a wrestling song. Both of CM Punk's songs, My Fire Burns, or I can't remember what the title is, already and Cult of Personality, obviously, are real songs, and they've just been slightly altered to fit an entrance. And Edge's theme is another one of those. And I feel like those are the best ones because they've got actual lyrics and things like that. There's nothing actually wrong with the current wrestling themes that WWE put out, but they do kind of feel like they're missing something by not being real songs, so to speak.
Yeah, I've just actually thought of one while we're sat here, and it's very left field. I don't think it's one that you would have even considered, but it's Enzo and Cass's song, and it's not so much a song, but do you remember it? It's the beginning of it's like I don't even want to do it. It's like no, but the beginning of Enzo's song, I can't think what it is. It's like a guitar or something. No, I don't know. But yeah, when Enzo and Cass came out, and then Enzo was on the mic spitting fire out at his opponents, it was just epic. I remember seeing it when I saw NXT come to England, thinking like 2015 or something, and everyone was on their feet. And Enzo and Cass were sort of a short-lived act on the main roster, but they just had so many good moments, and Enzo on the mic was epic. He may not have been good in the ring, but he's probably one of the best guys on the mic that I've seen in a long, long time. Another
one that kind of in the same vein of not so much the music, but kind of the whole entrance thing that goes with it is the New Day. Big E's kind of entrance promo goes really well. I've been thinking since.
I think you should try and do a Big E impression.
What, right now? Not a chance.
Right now, yeah. Well, if I'm singing WAP, you've got to do a Big E impression at least to introduce it.
When I was thinking about what my favourite wrestling themes are, there was a couple of names that did jump out at me. Triple H's The Game song by Motorhead is obviously...
Triple H jumped on you.
is obviously a classic, and it's got to be up there for one of the best ever. And another one, which it's been around for a long time. I never really thought about it as being it was obviously an enjoyable entrance song, but there is a particular moment that kind of upped it to kind of like the best ever for me, and that is Batista's theme music. And obviously the reason that has been built up is because of Xavier Woods passionately singing along to that song at WrestleMania, and that I feel like that is probably my favourite. It also has again a great start, which is what you need from an entrance music. You need that kind of that punch when it first hits to kind of get the crowd excited. So there's one last song I do want to mention as a good wrestling song, which is probably one that not a lot of people are gonna think of, but it was the Dolph Ziggler song, the I Am Perfection entrance music. It was the first version of that. I think he had 3 or 4 versions where they slightly altered it each time, but the first one I think fit his character so well at the time, and was a very enjoyable wrestling song. And maybe you should go back to that one. That and Glorious kind of like as a combination for that tag team. Let's go back to that WWE.
Glorious is another song that was awesome in NXT, with Bobby Roode coming out on that little swivel plate and spinning around in his robe. Those are glory days of Bobby Roode, man. That was awesome.
What I think we should do is all the songs we've mentioned here. It was also mentioned by James when he sent the question in as an idea. It's just because we can't play them on the podcast because of licensing and things like that. But what we can do is we can leave a link on our Twitter account to a Spotify playlist of all the songs we have mentioned in this podcast, and some people will be able to go along and check that out, and then we can do a little vote and see what people think is the best of the ones we've mentioned, or they could even suggest their own as well, and we can kind of see what the best is. I'm sure there are loads of great ones we have not mentioned here, because we could be here for hours if we mentioned every great wrestling song.
And as we can't play the music on this podcast, Damien's very kindly agreed to sing them now in his own version. So after 3, Damien, if you want to start with Batista's song, 3, 2, 1.
No, I'm just.
Oh.
I can't. You know what? Literally, I was going to do it, and as soon as you said, like, you started counting, all the words, the entire tune just vanished from my brain. Like, I was gonna do the
I
opening
can't even
bit,
think what it is now.
and literally, as soon as you've asked me
It goes,
to do it, I've
dunna, 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 dunna. Now you need to scream, yeah.
Yeah.
We could start a barbershop quartet, but only half of one. So a barbershop duet.
Barbershop duet. No, we couldn't. We are absolutely
Barbershop
terrible.
duet covering wrestling themes. Here we go. I'm going to do another one for you.
No, I think we should
let me have a
stop
think.
here whilst we still have a chance of keep remaining any
Time
listeners.
to play the game. Time to play the game. Dun-dun-dun, 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 dun-dun-dun.
Well, this has been a interesting podcast to record this week. We've been all over the place with our musical moments. I feel like this now is the perfect time to wrap up. I obviously now have to go off and film my punishment video, so if you are listening, look forward to seeing that in the next few days. It may already be uploaded when you're listening to this, so you can check it out on YouTube at the Figure Forecast. If you can't find our channel, you can obviously find it in on our Twitter profile as well. But thanks everyone for listening this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and hope you wasn't put off by our terrible singing ability.
Speak for yourself. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you the next time round.
As always, to follow us, you can check us out on Twitter at Figure4UK and on Facebook at the Figure Forecast. And we look forward to recording the next episode for you.
Goo in his mouth, there's some goo in his mouth, some goo in his mouth, there's some goo in his mouth. Signs of the Fiend, every single week. Spooky bullshit makes Randy's news word. Yes, 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 we're fucking with some spooky bullshit. Bring a bucket and a mop for this gooey fiend juice. It made Randy cough a lot. It's gooey fiend juice. Yeah, I saw the fiend burn and his mask fry, but I'm meant to believe that Randy will wrestle this guy. Randy killed him to put an end to this, but he's back in the form of bliss.